טכנולוגיה גלובלית. מי שמסתכל על הכותרות רואה שלמעשה מרבית המקומי זה יהיה האזור של מדינת ישראל, עזה, השטחים. הפאנל הזה יתנהל בשתי שפות. יש לנו דובר אחד, ביורן ברנר, שיציג את ההרצאה שלו באנגלית, ואליו הצטרפו גם אדם הופמן ועידו פרוינד, ומוחמד יפתח בעברית. I'm just going to say, I just notified the audience that this is going to be a bilingual session. Some of you will be speaking English, some of you will be speaking Hebrew. השאלות בהמשך, כל אחד בשפה שהוא או היא רוצים. ואנחנו נפתח עם מוחמד אבו נסרה, שעכשיו מכין את המצגת שלו. ההרצאה היא התמיכה בדאעש בקרב ערביי ישראל, בין זהות לאומית לאזרחית. מוחמד הוא דוקטורנט במחלקה לסוציולוגיה ואנתרופולוגיה באוניברסיטה העברית. הדוקטורט שלו עוסק ביזמות טכנולוגית, הוא חוקר בתוכנית נוי אור במכון... איך? ניובאואר, חסר פה. במכון למחקרים ביטחון לאומי, הוא מרצה במרכז לימודים אקדמיים באור יהודה. בבקשה.
שלום לכולם. אני אציג את המחקר שערכתי במסגרת המכון למחקרי ביטחון לאומי על הנושא של תמיכת ערביי ישראל בדאעש. לפני שאני מתחיל את העניין של להציג את המחקר שלי, אני רוצה להתייחס קצת לעניין של מדוע הערבים נמצאים בלב השיח הביטחוני במדינת ישראל. חשוב להדגיש שמערכת היחסים בין האוכלוסייה הערבית לאוכלוסייה היהודית וגם המדיניות הממשלתית כלפי האוכלוסייה הערבית מושפעת מהפן הביטחוני והתפיסה הביטחונית האומרת שהערבים מהווים איום ביטחוני על המדינה. הערבים נלחמים על המשאבים, רוצים לשנות את הסדר הקיים, לכן הם נתפסים כציבור עוין וגם כסיכון ביטחוני. התפיסה הזאת מתחזקת כתוצאה מעוד שתי סיבות מרכזיות. הסיבה הראשונה שהאוכלוסייה הערבית היא חלק מהאומה הערבית שנמצאת במלחמה עם מדינת ישראל וגם מהחברה הפלסטינית, והתפיסה אומרת שבמקרה של מלחמה הערבים ישתתפו במלחמה יצאו נגד מדינת ישראל ויצטרפו למדינה הנלחמת נגד ישראל. עוד סיבה מרכזית נוספת היא התמיכה המסיבית של האוכלוסייה הערבית בתביעות הלאומיות של הפלסטינים, להקים מדינה משלהם. חשוב להדגיש בהקשר הזה שלמרות התמיכה של האוכלוסייה הערבית בזכות ובתביעות הלאומיות, אלא שהם לא רוצים להיות חלק ממנה. במידה והיא תקום, אז חשוב להדגיש שהם לא רוצים להיות חלק ממנה. אז מה אנחנו יודעים על התמיכה של האוכלוסייה הערבית בדאעש? עד היום אין מידע שהוא אחיד. כל המידע שמתקבל לגבי האוכלוסייה הערבית והתמיכה בדאעש מתקבל על ידי כוחות הביטחון, אנשי זרועות הביטחון השונות כמו השב"כ או המל"ל. חשוב גם לחלק את התמיכה בדאעש לפי 4 מרכיבים. המרכיב הראשון זה לחימה בשורת הארגון דאעש. על פי הדוח של השב"כ, עד היום נהרגו 7 ערבים שהלכו להילחם בשורות דאעש. גם בהקשר הזה חשוב להדגיש גם שמלבד לנסיעה או המעבר של הערבים ממדינת ישראל לסוריה או לעיראק להילחם, יש חלק מהם שמנסים להביא את פעילות הטרור, היה ניסיון להביא את פעילות הטרור משם לישראל. זאת אומרת שהיו חלק מהערבים שכוחות הביטחון תפסו אותם כאשר מטרתם הייתה לפגוע בבסיס צה"ל, בבסיס של צה"ל, וגם לזרוק רימונים ובקבוקי תבערה נגד סופרים ומכולות שמוכרות באלכוהול, משקאות חריפים. יש גם את הסוג השני, שזה גיוס ותמיכה בכלכלית במתנדבים חדשים. יש היום, נתפסו גם על ידי מערכות הביטחון, אנשים שמגייסים ותומכים כלכלית באנשים כדי לעבור לסוריה. יש גם את ההזדהות וגם להפיץ את הערכים והאידיאולוגיה של דאעש. נתפסו במקרה הזה 14 אזרחים ערבים, 6 מהם מהנגב, שהם מורים, שניסו להפיץ את האידיאולוגיה של דאעש דרך הרשתות החברתיות. והמרכיב האחרון, או המאפיין האחרון של התמיכה, זה מגעים עם אנשי הארגון. אז מה מטרת המחקר שלי? המטרה היא לנסות ולבחון את עמדות האוכלוסייה הערבית, הן כאזרחים והן כמנהיגים לגבי דאעש. איך הם תופסים את הארגון הזה, וגם מהם המרכיבים המשפיעים על תפיסה זאת. אני התייחסתי לגורמים הפוליטיים, אזרחיים ואישיים. המחקר שלי מתבסס על נתונים שלקחתי מפרופסור סמי סמוחה, מהמדד ליחסי יהודים ערבים 2015. במחקר שלו השתתפו יותר מ-690, אבל אני לקחתי רק את המוסלמים. המחקר שלי התמקד אך ורק במוסלמים. בסקר המקורי שלו נכללו גם נוצרים וגם דרוזים. אני לקחתי אך ורק את המוסלמים. איך בחנתי את התמיכה? את התמיכה של האוכלוסייה הערבית הייתה בשאלה אחת שהופיעה בתוך הסקר שלו, שהיא אומרת שדאעש הוא ארגון טרור קיצוני, ואני כערבי מתבייש. לעומת זאת, העמדות של ההנהגה הערבית נמדדה באמצעות הכתבות מעיתונות וגם מראיונות בתקשורת. על פי המחקר שלי, התמיכה בדאעש יש 84% מהערבים תומכים בדאעש. בסדר? הממצאים האלו קרובים לחלק מהסקרים שנעשו לפני זה, כמו המחקר שנערך במכללת אחווה, שמצא 86%. לעומת זאת, הוא רחוק קצת ממחקר אחר שערכה ביו, החברה האמריקאית ביו, שדיברה על 98% התנגדות לדאעש. אז מה משפיע על השאלות, על העמדות של האוכלוסייה הערבית מדאעש? 47%, עכשיו, התוצאות מעכשיו והלאה מתייחסים רק לאנשים שתומכים בדאעש. בסדר? רק לתומכים בדאעש. 47% מתומכי דאעש מגדירים את עצמם כפלסטינים, כערבים או כפלסטינים, ללא כל מרכיב ישראלי. בסדר? 81 מהם, מתומכי דאעש, רואה בזהות הפלסטינית והמוסלמית שלהם כמרכיב בולט ביותר עבורם. 2/3 מהם אינם שבעי רצון, או שבעי רצון במידה מספקת מהיותם אזרחי מדינת ישראל. 50% מהם הינם תומכי הפלג הצפוני של התנועה האסלאמית. ו-91% מהם הצביעו בבחירות האחרונות לרשימה המשותפת. לגבי הגורמים האזרחיים, 76% מהם סבורים שהממשלה מפלה את הערבים, נוהגת כלפי הערבים כאל אזרחים עוינים שאינם ראויים לשוויון, או כאל אזרחים מדרגה שנייה. זאת אומרת, הם חווים את האי-שוויון ואת האפליה של המדינה. לעומת זאת, 43% מהם מעידים על כך שחוו על בשרם את האיומים או השפלות או במכות מצד יהודים. 48 מהם מתומכי דאעש תומכים בהפגנות לא חוקיות, ו40% מהם תומכים בשימוש באלימות. לגבי הנהגת האוכלוסייה הערבית, יש הסכמה מסיבית שכל הנהגת האוכלוסייה הערבית מתנגדת באופן נחרץ לארגון דאעש. הנהגה מתייחסת גם לרמה הפוליטית וגם לאנשי הפוליטיקה וגם לאנשי הדת. אני אצטט רק כמה מביניהם. מאזן גנאים, שהוא ראש ועדת ראשי הרשויות הערביות, אומר: אנחנו נגד הצטרפות של אזרחים ערבים לארגונים כמו דאעש. הדת שלנו שונה ממעשיהם הפושעים. איימן עודה, שהוא ראש הרשימה המשותפת, יוצא גם נגד דאעש, והוא רואה אותה כאויב האנושות כולה. העולם הערבי חייב להקיא אותם מתוכו ולהוביל לניצחון עמי האזור למען שלום צודק ודמוקרטיה. ראיד סלאח, שהוא ראש המנהיג של התנועה האסלאמית הפלג הצפוני, למרות שלפי הציפיות שכל מי שתומך בדאעש אז הוא מהתנועה האסלאמית, אז ראיד סלאח יוצא גם נגד דאעש, והוא אומר: מעשי דאעש אינם עולים בקנה אחד עם האסלאם. מטרת הארגון היא לפגוע בתדמית האסלאם והמוסלמים. דאעש מאיים על האזור ובמיוחד על עזה. כניסתם של אנשי דאעש לרצועת עזה יביא לפריצת מלחמת אחים. הציטוט האחרון הוא לאחד מאנשי הדת הידועים, אנשי הדת המוסלמים, אומר: דאעש הורס את שם האסלאם. הם מבצעים מעשים אכזריים שמנוגדים לדת המוסלמית. אם הם ימשיכו בדרכם וארצות הברית לא תשמיד את הארגון הזה, אני בטוח שהרבה אזרחים ערבים ממדינת ישראל יחדרו לסוריה ויהיו מוכנים להקריב את חייהם כדי להילחם נגד דאעש.
למה הוא לא מזדהה?
מה?
למה הוא לא מזדהה?
לא
לשמו. למה הוא לא מזדהה לשמו?
למה לא הבאת את השם שלו?
כן.
זאת הטעות שלי. אוקיי, אבל לא, השם שלו מופיע בכתבה.
כתב השם.
מה?
מי זה?
זה אחד אני לא זוכר את השם שלו, אבל הוא אחד מאנשי התנועה האסלאמית הפלג הצפוני. אחד אנשי המפתיע בתנועה האסלאמית. לסיכום, התמיכה בדאעש וגם חדירת האזרחים הערבים מישראל לסוריה או לעיראק ללחימה בארגון דאעש היא עדיין שולית, והיא נמצאת ממש היא שולית ובהיקפה. האוכלוסייה הערבית, הן כאזרחים והן כמנהיגים, מתנגדים נחרצות לדאעש. עם זאת, היות ומדובר עדיין ב-16%, זה מהווה או אמור להדליק אור אדום למקבלי ההחלטות. זה מהווה סכנה לביטחון המדינה וגם לביטחון של החברה הערבית, ויש לטפל בזה. תכף אני אתייחס מה צריך לעשות. אם נעשה את העבודה של השב"כ וננסה לבנות את פרופיל התומכים, אז אפשר להגיד שרובם התומכים בדאעש הם אנשים שמבחינתם הזהות הפלסטינית, הזהות הערבית, גוברת על הזהות הישראלית. הם אנשים שחוו אפליה חוו אפליה, חשים כמופלים, שהמדינה מתייחסת אליהם בהשפלה וגם באי שוויון, ואינם שבעי רצון לחייהם במדינת ישראל. כמובן יש גם את התמיכה שלהם, הם תומכים גם בפלג הצפוני של התנועה האסלאמית, תומכים בהפגנות לא חוקיות ובשימוש באלימות. אם אנחנו נחלק את הפרופיל הזה, את כל המרכיבים של הפרופיל של תומכי דאעש, אפשר לקטלג אותו לשני מרכיבים מרכזיים. המרכיב הראשון שזה הזהות הלאומית, והמרכיב השני זה המרכיב האזרחי. המרכיב האזרחי מתייחס למערכת היחסים של האוכלוסייה הערבית עם האוכלוסייה היהודית, גם עם המדינה, לזכויות שלהם וליחס שהם זוכים אליו מהמדינה. לעומת זאת, המרכיב השני הוא המרכיב הלאומי, שהוא מתייחס השייכות של האוכלוסייה הערבית לאומה הערבית ולעם הפלסטיני. לכן אפשר לטעון שהתמיכה בדאעש ניזון ממערכת היחסים בין המדינה והאוכלוסייה היהודית לאוכלוסייה הערבית. כמובן למציאות החברתית, כלכלית והפוליטית של החיים ערבי ישראל, מערכת היחסים שלהם עם האוכלוסייה היהודית. כידוע לכולם, יש אפליה מושרשת כנגד הערבים מצד המדינה, ויש מערכת יחסים עקורה בין האוכלוסייה היהודית לאוכלוסייה הערבית. מערכת יחסים שמתבטאת או מאופיינת בהיעדר אמון וניתוק כמעט מוחלט. בהקשר של המדינה יש אפליה בכל תחומי החיים, אם זה בחינוך, בתשתיות, בכלכלה, בתעסוקה. יש אפליה מסיבית נגד הערבים. לא רק, יש בעיה נוספת שהיא נמצאת בכותרות היום, שזה הפשיעה, הטיפול בפשיעה. היום בחברה הערבית כמעט כל שבוע יש 2 הרוגים. שיעור ההרוגים הערבים, הנרצחים הערבים, מהווה 50% ממקרי הרצח בישראל, למרות שהם מהווים 20% מהמדינה. מתי המדינה כן מעוניינת לטפל בבעיית הפשיעה? ברגע שהנשק של הערבים מופנה ליהודים, ויש את המקרה של ברח לי השם שלו, מערערה, שרצח יהודי ברמת אביב. לכן צריך שהמדינה תטפל בבעיית האכיפה, במיוחד בבעיית האכיפה והחוק, במיוחד שהמרחק בין פשע לבין טרור הוא ממש מצומצם. על המדינה חובה שהמדינה תפעל לחיזוק המרכיב האזרחי. המרכיב האזרחי במובן של לחזק את הקשר בין המדינה לבין האוכלוסייה הערבית, לפעול לשוויון של הפעלת מדיניות של שוויון לאוכלוסייה הערבית, ולשלב את האוכלוסייה הערבית בחברה הישראלית. שילוב של האוכלוסייה הערבית אין משמעותו שילוב של הליכוד ושל נתניהו. מבחינת הליכוד ונתניהו, שילוב האוכלוסייה הערבית מתמקד אך ורק בפן הכלכלי. זאת אומרת, משלבים אותם יותר ויותר בכלכלה, אבל מצד שני מפלים אותם ומדירים אותם מהפוליטיקה ומהמעגל התרבותי, הפוליטי והחברתי, ויש לכם מספר חוקים שמצביעים על זה. נתחיל בחוק ההדחה, חוק המואזן, ויש עוד חוקים. לבסוף אני רוצה להתייחס, המחקר יש לו את המוגבלויות משלו, כמו כל מחקר אחר. המחקר בחן את הסוגיה של התמיכה בדאעש על ידי שאלה אחת, למרות שהתמיכה היא לא רק תמיכה, התמיכה מתחלקת לכמה רבדים. יש תמיכה אידיאולוגית, יש תמיכה או יש מוכנות לעבור ולהילחם, יש את הניסיון ליצור קשר עם חברי אנשי דאעש, או לממן את יציאתם של אנשים מחוץ להילחם בשורות של דאעש. לכן חשוב מאוד לנסות ולבדוק את התמיכה באמצעות מספר שאלות שיבחנו ויחסו את כל הרבדים השונים. תודה.
תודה רבה למוחמד, וכעת אנחנו עוברים ל3 הרצאות שיועברו באנגלית. We're now moving on to 3 lectures that will be given in English. The first one is by Adam Hoffman. Adam Hoffman is a PhD candidate at the Department of Political Science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the lecturer at the Rothberg International School of the Hebrew University. He's a junior researcher at the Middle East Network Analysis Desk at the Moshe Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University and a research associate at the Forum for Original Thinking. In 2015, he was a Neubauer Research Fellow at the Program for Terrorist and Low-Intensity Conflict at the Institute of National Security Studies at Tel Aviv. His research areas include Salafi Jihadi ideology, global jihadi organizations, and jihadist use of social media, and his publications have appeared in Newsweek, the Center for Religion and Geopolitics, INSS Strategic Assessment, the New East, Moshe Dayan's Center Beehive, and the Forum for Regional Thinking. And Adam will be talking about a caliphate upon the prophetic methodology, ISIS claim to global religious authority, and I think this is the one lecture that gives us the global perspective in this panel. Thank you.
So thank you everyone, I'm very happy to be here today. I'll be talking less about what ISIS does or how ISIS fights, and much more about how ISIS presents itself and what is actually the ISIS discourse as it relates to Islam more broadly. As a starting point, I think that it's great to have this conference today in mid-June, because we're celebrating, commemorating, marking, whatever you want to call it, 3 years, almost exactly 3 years since the declaration of the caliphate, ISIS caliphate, which, at least physically, in terms of territory, seems to be crumbling before our very eyes, which is, of course, a very good development. But 3 years ago, in late June 2014, then ISIS declared the re-establishment of the caliphate, presenting it as the glad tidings for the Muslim Ummah, as a fulfillment of the promise of Allah, and something which really changed the history of Islam and the history of the contemporary Middle East. And I argue that if this claim is this move about the establishment of the caliphate was a claim for global religious authority, on which I'll explain in this lecture. The significance of this of the caliphate statement by ISIS was not just in terms of regional expansion or its call for Muslims worldwide to actually join its caliphate, or derivatives of this statement, but it stirred an enormous public debate, which also had later on policy implications. Also became an academic debate. Whether or not ISIS is Islamic. It was a very simple, straightforward question of whether you can actually call ISIS Islamic. And this debate specifically was formulated very clearly in an article which appeared in the Atlantic in 2015, I think it was March 2015, by Graham Wood, which argued, as you can see here, this is basically the main argument of this article, saying that the reality is that the Islamic State is Islamic, very Islamic, and just saying that while it's attracted its fair share of psychopaths and disaffected populations of the Middle East and Africa, and in Europe, but the kind of Islam that it preaches to and practices is something which is seen as a coherent and even learned interpretation of Islam. And I think that this has really framed our understanding, or at least the public debate of how we should view ISIS, whether or not, this became a very polarized debate, whether or not it's Islamic in terms of a legitimate representation of Islam as the true embodiment of religion, yes or not, whether that is actually a correct statement. I think that this is a somewhat misleading and a slightly wrong question. I think that this is mainly a question which we can't answer. Oh, okay, is this better? Okay, sorry. I think that mainly this is a question that should be answered, and actually is, and I'll mention this also later in this presentation, should be answered by Muslims themselves. It's something which I believe no researcher can actually dig into this the debate within the Muslim world, saying what is and isn't Islamic, but this is something which should be answered by Muslims themselves, and actually is answered quite explicitly, and I'll show this later on. But I think that the more interesting question, at least for us as researchers, is to try to analyze and understand how does ISIS justify its demand for global religious authority. In other words, how ISIS presents itself as Islamic. And I think this is an important question for two reasons. First of all, this became a very heated debate. And while this debate about the nature of jihadism being a presentation of Islam already started after 9/11, the debate regarding Al-Qaeda as being, Islamic or not was never as heated and controversial as we see in the case of ISIS. And secondly, this matters because mainly for ISIS' own supporters, fighters, and members, they see ISIS as Islamic. I mean, there's no question about it. And you see that with interviews with active ISIS members, foreign fighters who have fled ISIS and returned to the West. So this is something which is quite pervasive in their understanding of ISIS and forms a major aspect of their attraction to ISIS specifically. And this is what I want to talk about in this lecture, trying to make sense of it. So when I say that ISIS presented a demand for global religious authority, so this is actually embodied in ISIS' own motto, which appears in official ISIS documents, internal paperwork, and also in street signs, as you can see here from Mosul, but in many of the official social media products and almost in any kind of official ISIS media product, you can see some kind of echo of this. And this is specifically that ISIS defines itself as a caliphate upon the prophetic methodology, which is also the title for today's talk, okay? Khilafa ala minhaj an-nubuwah. Presents itself not just as an organization which has re-established a caliphate, which was formally abolished by the Ottomans in 1924, but going back to a much earlier period in Islamic history, going back specifically to the Abbasid Caliphate, and saying basically the sense that the Abbasid Caliphate and the Caliphate has been absent from the lives of Muslims, and ISIS is the only organization today which is actually practicing that kind of caliphate in its everyday practices. So the first component of this should be pretty obvious, I think, to everyone in this audience today, that the first component for ISIS claim to be Islamic or true Islam is jihad. And jihad is the violent, most combatant sense of the word, and this is manifested in its global terrorism campaigns, which we've seen more dramatically in the past few years, and also in insurgency tactics and political violence in areas of control in Iraq and Syria. So this is something which is promoted, encouraged, and justified theologically as jihad is the peak of Islam, and you can see that in many ISIS media statements and products. So this is, I think, pretty obvious, but my argument is that it doesn't stop there. And specifically, that at least according to ISIS' own ethos, what makes ISIS Islamic is not just jihad in the battlefield, but also the practice of khitbah and da'wah. Okay, which basically refers, as I understand it, to an implementation of Islam in the public sphere. Okay, so making Islam relevant, public, evident to the lives of Muslims in the everyday sense. And this has to do with ISIS' own worldview. ISIS, I should have mentioned it at the beginning, but in many of its nasheeds, for example, Islamic chants, then it argues that, for example, that the light of the religion has returned and vanquished the dryness of the world. So basically saying that until ISIS redeclared a caliphate in late 2014, Islam has been absent from this earth. Not maybe marginalized or neglected as many jihadists would argue, but has been absent in its totality from the lives of everyday Muslims, and now ISIS is actually bringing that back. And in a more recent nasheed, released by ISIS in the past few weeks, defined the Dawla, Islamic State, as the fortress of the Muslims and as something which really allows the practice of Islam and encourages it in the public sphere in the full sense of the word. So Dawah and Khizbah, I'll just briefly elaborate on that. Khizbah is basically the office or the practice of commanding right and forbidding wrong, which is a central principle in Islamic thought. You can find, I believe, 9 references to this commandment in the Quran. The most famous of which is this one, saying about the Muslim Ummah that you enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong and believe in Allah. Basically saying that not just that commanding right and forbidding wrong is an ethical commitment of Muslims, but also that this is what sets Muslims apart from any other kind of people, any kind of religion in the human world. So ISIS takes that to the fullest sense of the word, okay, and it has its own Hizbullah force, okay, which is its religious police. And the main objective, as ISIS presents it, of the Hizbullah force is to implement Tawhid, the complete monotheism of Allah, and to combat shirk. Okay, shirk, polytheism, the opposite of Tawhid, and it's pretty much the greatest sin or offense in ISIS's playbook. So what we see here is actually from Wulad Baraka, so from one of ISIS's three provinces in Libya. And what we see here may seem very bizarre to us, just describing the statues of horses, but anything which depicts anything other than Allah is considered shirk, according to the Salafi Jihadism interpretation, and ISIS will boast about breaking that and shattering these idols as it sees that. And you can also see here an infographic which basically explains how much statues and cigarettes, for example, ISIS has confiscated using its Hizbullah force, and you see that a lot in ISIS propaganda. So, for example, the shattering of liquor bottles, the burning of cigarettes, and drugs, of course, hashish, and etc. Anything which is seen as un-Islamic is wiped out and combated by the Hizbullah force. And this is also a prominent topic in the activities of Gulak Sina, as Rafi can tell you maybe afterwards. Okay, the second aspect here is da'wah, which I believe that most of us use for most of the terms, basically Islamic outreach or preaching. It should be said that da'wah is by no means a practice which is exclusive or unique to ISIS. It's a prevalent Islamic practice. It's not necessarily political, it's not necessarily violent in any sense, but ISIS also boasts about, implementing da'wah in its territories as a central part of its Islamic activities. And you can also see here an infographic by Amak, its so-called news agency, from the activities of the Diwan al-Dawah wal Masajid, okay, basically saying how many mosques they've renovated for a specific time period, how many da'wah forms, these kind of public outreach activities that you can see here. This is from Mosul, from Iraq. Okay, how many of these kind of festivals and these public preaching events ISIS actually held in a specific time, and this is really important part of how ISIS sees itself, because basically by holding these da'wah events, and ISIS can tell its audience, its supporters, that ISIS is actually practicing a more holistic view of Islam, not just fighting jihad on the battlefield, which is of course, as it sees, the responsibility of all Muslims, and everyone should participate in jihad, but also preaching Islam, calling others to the faith, and these, spreading these kind of jihadi values also among its population. And along with Hizbah, this is really encapsulates the public aspects and the implementation of Islam as ISIS sees it. So, but if what I talked about until now basically refers to how ISIS practices Islam and displays that kind of practice in its messaging, its propaganda products, the second aspect is more negative, and I think is also more unique to ISIS. It should be said that, and we've also heard that right now in Mohammed's talk, ISIS claim to being the only Islamic entity or force today, and to have this kind of exclusive monopoly on the correct interpretation of Islam is rejected by pretty much everyone. Islamic scholars, other Islamist movements, as we've just heard from also by Raif Salah and the Islamic movement here in Israel, and this is pretty much a consensus. You could say that it comes from, it's motivated by various reasons, but it's pretty much a consensus that Muslims worldwide actually reject ISIS. These are perhaps the two most prominent examples that in 2014, after ISIS's caliphate coalition, then the chief mufti of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Sheikh, denounced ISIS and called them the #1 enemy of Islam, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, of these kind of extremist organizations. But this was
actually motivated specifically by ISIS's caliphate regulation. And another prominent example is the open letter, which was signed by more than 120 Muslim scholars, addressed to the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, okay, the so-called caliph of the Islamic State. And you can see here also to the fighters and followers of the so-called Islamic State. So it's basically a public attempt to delegitimize ISIS on Islamic grounds. And I think it's a very interesting attempt to present this kind of a formal rejection of ISIS's claim to religious authority on Islamic grounds by established religious scholars. And this has led to something which I think is more unique to the specific case of ISIS, and this is that ISIS, for more than 2 years now, actually calls for the killing, for the violent confrontation and attack of Muslim scholars, of the ulama. Okay, this is from ISIS's Dabiq magazine, I think from almost 2 years ago. And the picture here is a bit small, but we can see here circled in red is actually the same cleric we've just seen here. Okay, Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Sheikh, and the Saudi ulama, the religious establishment, calling them the imams of kufr and of unbelief, and calling specifically for killing them and confronting them violently. And while we do recognize this kind of violence also from other jihadist movements, specifically Al-Qaeda, this should be noted that this is really unique to ISIS, because, for example, Al-Qaeda consistently, also Bin Laden, also Ayman Zawahiri, see the ulama as a problem, see the ulama as part of the as agents of the Muslim regimes in the Middle East. Okay, part of the Muslim regimes in the Middle East, but the correct solution to that should be to criticize them, to try to correct them, to try to win them over to the jihadist cause, but not to violently confront them. And even Ayman Zawahiri published a very interesting document in 2013 called General Guidance for Jihad, and he addressed this specific point, saying that we may disagree with the ulama, and we have our differences, but they are part of Islam, and they should be criticized, their claims should be addressed, but should not be fought on the battlefield, should not be physically attacked, unless they specifically attack the Mujahideen first, physically attack. So it was there was an attempt here to ethically define the limits of the correct criticism towards the ulama. In the case of ISIS, we see no such restraints whatsoever. And this is actually justified by ISIS more officially. This is by a speech from Mohammad Adnani, the spokesman of ISIS from June 2015, as you can see here. And here, Adnani, not just in this statement, but I think this is a very good illustration of that, Adnani basically defines the ulama as the donkeys of knowledge, khimar al-ilm, instead of saying the ahl al-ilm, the people of knowledge, saying that they're the donkeys of knowledge, and he's trying to say to the ISIS followers and also potential recruits to ISIS that they should not really listen to the fatwas of these ulama, because they've actually lost their status already. And the main cause, I think this is a real interesting justification, that not because of their religious credentials or how learned they are in Islamic law and sciences, but because they never fired a single bullet for the cause of Allah, nor have they witnessed a single scene or episode in the battlefield with the Mujahideen. Basically saying that ISIS is basically positioning participation in jihad on the battlefield as a sole core term for religious authority, and this is, while it's it builds on previous discourse of jihad groups, including Al-Qaeda in early 2000. This is really a more extreme version of that, and specifically with the calling to the direction to kill these ulama for the compliance with the Muslim regimes. So, just to summarize it, what we see in the case of ISIS, as I understand it, is on one hand a demand for global religious authority. ISIS repeatedly in various media publications positions itself and claims to be the sole representative of Muslims today, the fortress, saying, for example, the Dawla is the fortress of the Muslims worldwide, and the only place for, the only place that Muslims should actually live to fully practice their religion. And it justifies that not just in terms of religion, but the religious discourse is very pervasive here on the grounds that they engage in jihad, fight the enemies of Allah on the battlefield, but also that because of their practice of khizbah, da'wah, and also by delegitimizing and openly calling to attack the ulama. Thank you very much.
Our third speaker is Freund from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's writing his MA in the Department of Middle East Studies under the supervision of Hillel Cohen, and the MA is about the relations between Hamas and Salafis in the Gaza Strip. And the title of his talk today will be The Sunni Schism in the Gaza Strip, the relations between the Salafis and Hamas 2006-2016.
Okay, so first of all, good morning. My name is Ido. I would like to thank first of all the first two speakers, Mohammad and Adam and Björn, for participating in the panel and sharing their fields of expertise. I'm going to be talking about the relationship between the Salafis and Hamas in Gaza. Basically, this relationship is quite unique in a way that now it's been 10 years and 5 days since the hostile or takeover, you can take it, you can name it as you wish, of Hamas on the Gaza Strip. Taking over the Strip actually made it, I think, the first long-lasting time when we have the Muslim Brotherhood, or you can say a movement that is related to the Muslim Brotherhood, in power and in charge with a small Salafi minority that needs to deal with this situation. The Salafis believe in a different interpretation of the text and how they should be implemented, and they have to live knowing that they know they have the right way and they are ruled by a second party, which believes on their and that they hold the right key for Islam. I'm not going to delve deeply into each and every organization because there are many Salafi groups, but I would like to start from this picture here, or these two flags. So on the your right, we have, this is Hamas's flag, and on the left, the object of Adam's talk, ISIS. Looking at these two flags is misleading in a way, because other than some coloration and maybe a different font and certain features, this basically to the ordinary person looks the same. And many people ask, why are Salafis fighting the Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza, or fighting Hamas in Gaza? Aren't they all Muslims? So, as I will show you soon, the fight over who's the true Salafist is the object of this talk, and this is what got me started on my dissertation that I'm working on. And to start it off, I would like to show you a short clip of Mahmoud al-Zahar. He's a member of Hamas political bureau. 2009, after he was giving an interview on Al Jazeera, basically fending off claims that Hamas had maliciously and have killed Salafis in the Ibn Taymiyyah Mosque. Ibn Taymiyyah Mosque, 2009, August, basically before ISIS even matriculated into a state, there was a very short Islamic emirate in Gaza, 2009, and Hamas quelled this emirate killed most of its leadership and afterwards persecuted the rest, injuring many. So this is Mahmoud al-Zahar referring to this incident.
نحن السلفيون في قطاع غزة، نحن الذين علمنا سيرة السلف الصالح، نحن الذين أنشأنا من الروضة إلى الجامعة الإسلامية، ونحن الذين علمنا كل من تسمع عنه أنه سلفي. نحن السلفيون، ونحن ندفع ثمن هذا التوجه، هذا الإيمان. ولا أي شخص آخر إذا كان دخلنا في قصة واحد يعلن عن نفسه سلفي وهو لم يكن له أي علاقة لا بالسلفية ولا غيرها، دخل مؤسسة السلفية وتركها. هل يقبل أخونا محمد عبد الله كما ذاعت الجزيرة أن يأتي الأخ رحمة الله عليه عبد اللطيف موسى ليقول حكومة الكلاب وأرى رؤوس حكومة الكلاب؟ هل هذا الكلام مقبول أن يقال وأن يتم في داخل المسجد وأن يتم إطلاق الرصاص على من طلبوه أن يفاوضهم للخروج من المسجد؟
Okay, we'll leave this for next. Anyway, so who's the real Salafi? This is the question. Basically, if you would ask Hamas, as we saw now, they claim that they are Salafis, which is, for those who have dealt with the matter, a very peculiar thing for Muslim Brotherhood people to say, because basically the Muslim Brotherhood has stated, in the past, that it's also Salafi, but back then it was a very, very different connotation, and they tried to distance themselves from the Salafi mind and the connotation that has been attached to it since Al-Qaeda in 2001. I would like to address the issue not through a very lengthy talk about quotes, but through symbolism. Because I believe that through symbolism we can get how these groups interact. So, we have here basically Hamas on this side and the Salafis on this side. We have few different organizations or bodies. So this is the symbol of the movement of Hamas. This is the logo of the military wing of Hamas, the Azandin al-Qassam Brigade. Two purist associations that work in the Gaza Strip, and two jihadi organizations, Jaish al-Islam and Jund Ansarullah, which Mahmoud al-Zahar have talked about in the last video on his leader, Abdel Latif Musa. So, first of all, when you look at these logos, I think one of the most apparent things is the striking difference once you go into the details. This is Hamas's logo from 1987. And as you know, Hamas has opposed entering the political arena, but if you look closely, you can see that the sphere of thought was there since the beginning. We have the Palestinian flag. We have mandatory Palestine. And for instance, we have the name, Palestine. And we also have some Islamic contours. We have the green color, the swords which are remnants of the Muslim Brotherhood background, and we have, of course, the Al-Aqsa, or the Qubbat al-Sakhra, the Dome of the Rock, as a sign for Palestinian nationalism, but also as an Islamic symbol in Palestine. What is striking is the combination. Here you can see that the movement is trying, at least, to appear as part of the national arena. Another peculiar thing is if you look at the symbol of the military wing, we have here a militant holding the Quran, but in his other hand, what is he holding?
M16.
An M16 rifle, an American rifle. I think it's the only rifle, M16 rifle in an Islamic movement's logo, which is a bit peculiar. But it goes to show, I think, that it's a modern Islamic movement. Yeah, because the M16 wasn't used by Al-Qaeda, for instance. It was used by Hamas. And if you take, for instance, the Quran, which is featured here, how does that correspond with the flag here, with the Palestinian flag? Because Palestine is a secular idea in a way, and the Quran, which Hamas always says, Al-Quran Dusturuna, this is our constitution. How does that work with them sitting in parliament? So you can see that tension inside, which a lot of the times creates many difficulties with running a certain way, because this is pulling one way and this is pulling the other. If we compare it, on the other hand, to the Salafis, so, for instance, Jaish al-Islam, look at this. First of all, the mindset is global. This is who I am. This is my final goal. However, this is not where they're operating. They're operating in Gaza. So this is their mindset, but it's misleading in a way, because their world is the Gaza Strip. It's their enclave. This is the world, and whoever opposes this world is not part of this enclave. Another interesting thing is you can take this logo, and it could be related to any Islamic movement in the world whatsoever. This could be in Syria, this could be in Somalia. Naming your movement Jaish al-Islam is, it's not a local thing. It's a global thing, global mindset. And if you look at the purists, they're kind of in the middle, in a way. On the one hand, if you look here at Jamiyat Ibn Baz al-Khayriyya, which is the Ibn Baz Association for Charity, we have Palestine and Qita Gaza. The colors are Palestinian in a way, but the name of the institution is of a Saudi sheikh. And we have the palm trees, which could be connected, but I think they're more related to their Saudi patrons. Over here, down here, it's a bit blurry, but this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Unlike the Sahra, which is here, they deal with something that is less glamorous, but is the actual mosque or on its own. And also, if you look closely, if you omit the word Palestine here, mostly, it could also fit somewhere, anywhere in the world. So, in that sense, the tensions between those are apparent. These are trying to balance national and religious under one roof. And it's okay to have an M16 with a Quran. These, however, this is an AK-47, which is more related to Afghanistan, but still, the entire idea is global. It's global, and the enclave in which it resides. And that leads us to the conflict between the two. Because these have to balance religion and having Sharia and the law of the Palestinian parliament, which they are a part of. These, on the other hand, if you're not a part of our world, which is our enclave, you're an enemy. And as a very interesting debate ran on Al Jazeera, I think it was 2 years back. It was from the close enemy, or there was an Islamic scholar there who was fighting with a Yazidi or a Kurdish intellectual, and he said, following ISIS, we are fighting from the closest enemy to the one after. So if you're not part of the enclave and you're sharing Islam with a secular way of thought, this is where we're going to fight. And just to conclude, so just to conclude this, I will show you another clip, maybe talk about it a bit, and afterwards leave room for some questions. this is a very, when talking about the Sunni schism in the Gaza Strip, this is, I think, a pinnacle moment in a way, or at least in the last years. This is a video of Gazan ISIS or IS Islamic State fighters, who originally, by the way, were in the organization of Abdel Latif Musa, the leader of Jund Ansarullah. And they are referring specifically to this tension that I talked about, and with specific interest in the end, pay attention to the flag, how the Hamas relates to flags. So let's watch it.
إن الهدف من الجهاد ليس تحرير أرض وليس أن نستولي على حفنة من التراب ونحكم بها بنفس شرع من كان يحكم قبلنا. الجهاد في شريعة ربنا سبحانه وتعالى هو هو القتال لتحكيم شرع الله عز وجل ولتكون كلمة الله هي العليا. ولكن ما يحصل في بلادنا للأسف هو باعترافهم مقاومة، هو قتال حمية، هو قتال عن الأرض. والدليل أن المقصد منه ليس تحكيم شرع الله. فها هم يحكمون غزة منذ ما يزيد عن 8 أعوام، فهل طبقوا فيها حكما واحدا لله سبحانه وتعالى؟ انظروا كيف يربون جنودهم، كيف يربونهم على الولاء للعلم الذي لو توفر إلي الآن لدسته بقدمي ولحرقته.
Okay, so basically, what the militant was talking about is Hamas is ruling for 8 years now, or now it's 10, 8 back then. 10 years. Have they implemented Sharia? Have they implemented the hudud, the laws that require certain punishment? Have they implemented Sharia rule in Hizbah just like the Islamic State does? And the answer, according to these Salafis, is no. And if you're not doing it, you're doing shirk, just as Adam related to it in his talk. And that means that you are disobeying Allah. You're making a comparison between human law and parliament law to God's law. And if you're not implementing it, then you're an enemy. And if you're an enemy, this will end in a clash. Another final thing is, the only jihadi Salafi organizations that have really managed to stick out are the ones that have built themselves upon existing structures. Jaish al-Islam was basically built as a cover for former Hamas militants and PRC militants who didn't have room after Hamas took over, and they wanted to keep their weapons. This is the Durmush family, which is very, very famous, and they organized themselves under the flag of Salafi Jihadism to keep their weapons. This, which is, I think, the most interesting organization of them all, was basically built on two heads. One was a Salafi leader, Abdel Latif Musa, we've talked about him earlier, who has studied in Egypt and became a scholar and doctor in Gaza and had a community around him, and a militant that was sent by Hamas in Damascus at the time to build Hamas might, and he in the military might in the strip, and he basically said, you stop fighting Israel, I'm joining forces with another one. So this is it till now. How much time do we have? 2 minutes, so question? Yes?
perhaps Mahmoud was, when he said we are Salafis, was sort of speaking to the wing inside Hamas, the Qassam brigades, drawn to Salafi Jihadism. So could you talk about this tension within Hamas and
Its military role?
The attraction to Salafi Jihadism within the military wing?
Basically, so Fuad Banat, sorry, the militant that was sent from Damascus to the Gaza Strip, basically split with Hamas, and the origin of the split was that he was not ready to accept the fact that Hamas stopped practicing jihad against Israel. And once the militants find that have been taught that we have to fight, they reached their, Hamas reached the position of power, and now they're not fighting. They were looking for other means to fight. And not necessarily are they driven solely by believing that they're Salafi now, but rather they keep the faith. And by the way, the purists are as possible to become jihadis. It just depends on the atmosphere and who is in power at the moment there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Björn Brenner, who is a guest from the Swedish Defense University in Stockholm, where he's a lecturer. And right now he's a visiting fellow at the Institut Français du Proche-Orient in Amman, Jordan. Björn has conducted extensive field research in Syria, Jordan, the West Bank, and Gaza, and has authored extensively on Palestinian studies and politics. His latest book, Gaza Under Hamas, From Islamic Democracy to Islamist Governance, was recently published by IB Taurus. And Björn will be speaking about the de-radicalization of Islamists by Islamists, Hamas's kid glove approach to Salafi jihadists in the Gaza Strip, 2010-2014. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. So, this will be, I think, a very nice wrap-up of what we've been talking about so far. And so, I'm Björn Brenner. I'm a Doctor of Political Science with the Swedish Defense University. I have been in Amman. I'm now back in Stockholm at the Defense University. And so, what I'm going to talk about is part of a larger project that was about Hamas's governance in Gaza, and it's focusing on what's going on inside Gaza. It's not focusing at all on Hamas's relations with Israel or external relations. And this is because the academic knowledge, the knowledge about what Hamas is about, well, it's quite known how it interacts with Israel and with the outside, but it's much less known what's going on inside. And of course, the general question about Hamas is, so what is the nature of Hamas? Is there something more to Hamas than violence? If there's not anything more than violence inside Hamas, well then we can equate it to Daesh or any other extremist Islamist organization. And then of course the policy response that should follow would be elimination. There could be no other question to that. But if on the other hand there is something else, well then perhaps Hamas could be pushed, coerced, induced into different behavior. So what I'm interested in here, and what I was interested in this project, is to find out, so looking on the inside, what is Hamas behavior in practice? And to exemplify just a little bit before I talk about Hamas's relations to the Salafi Jihadis, an example of how I work would be if we look at the new charter. So Hamas's new charter. I know that in Israel most analysts say also, okay, we can see certain changes in this charter. but they are cosmetic. I would agree to that the actual details in this charter are cosmetics, more or less, even though there are substantial changes, like, for example, the relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood and so on. But I'm looking at practices. I don't trust politicians. I don't trust what politicians say, what political actors say. I look at what they actually do. It doesn't matter if it's Hamas or Daesh or my own politicians in my own country. So when we look at the processes leading up to Hamas is being able to really put together and publish this new charter, it's quite substantive. It took several years for them to discuss this. They put enormous amount of effort into this, which leads me to conclude that it means something. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have changed into something more moderate, but it means that there are different conclusions to it. It means that they're able to stay relevant in the conflict. They're able to keep the organization together. They're not a dinosaur dying. They are still the pink elephant in the room that we have to relate to in some way. And so a strategy to cope with them is necessary, a long-term strategy. And what I see in Israel today, well, maybe there's not very much of any long-term idea of what to do with Hamas, right? So this is a little bit how I think. And so I don't know if you can read this, but this larger project of mine focuses on 3 aspects inside Gaza. And I should also add that this is based on 5-year-long fieldwork inside Gaza, where I was staying with Palestinian families, following Hamas, observing what they were doing, going to the ministries, talking to people, talking to low-level ministerial clerks, all the way up to the ministers, and interviewing the Hamas leaders inside Gaza. And so the large focus was threefold. And it was about how they dealt with the opposition coming into power. It was how they dealt with, so it was Fatah, of course, how they dealt with the extra parliamentary opposition, which would be the Salafi Jihadism, which I will talk to you about here now. But also this traditional thing when we study Islamists in power, how do they change the system, or do they not change the system in terms of implementing Sharia rule, in terms of Islamization? What did Hamas do with the formal court system of the Palestinian Authority when they took over Gaza? Did they change it into a Sharia system or not? So more about this can be read in my book called Gaza Under Hamas, and I will now focus only on what I call Key Challenge 2, how they countered this violent radicalization beyond Hamas's own ideology. To understand what Salafi Jihadism is about in Gaza, you have to first de-dramatize who the Salafi Jihadists are. They are not super ideologists. They are young kids between 15 and 20, mostly young, angry men, as it's always in these situations. And they are just tired of the situation, and after Friday prayer they get together and in smaller groups, and they talk about, okay, so this is crazy, why don't we do anything? Hamas is not doing anything. Hamas is not advancing the Palestinian cause. Hamas is no longer fighting Israel. We need to do something on our own. So you have this movement, and then you have to understand the extreme radicalization, broad radicalization in Gazan society, where a person who is perhaps 15 years today will, when you ask him, he will tell you, or she will tell you, oh, so I've always heard my grandparents mourn about that they were never able to come back to their house in what is now Israel. I've seen the key from the house on the table always in the living room. My father was either killed or arrested in the first Intifada. My elder brothers were killed or arrested in the second Intifada. I mean, you have to understand the deep radicalization and the deep feeling of humiliation that they're coming from. I'm not saying that this is a correct understanding of the situation in general. I'm just saying if you want to understand what the Salafi Jihadis are doing and what they want, well, this is the kind of broad view that they're coming from. But also, as the previous speakers have been saying, so Salafi Jihadism in Gaza provided a great identity, cloak of new identity. When people said, well, we can't identify with Hamas any longer. They are not fighting Israel. We need something new. And then there was Al-Qaeda. And I would call these guys, the Salafi Jihadis in Gaza, Al-Qaeda wannabes. Al-Qaeda wannabes amateurs. And they would log on to the internet and they would Google cool names to call themselves. So they would call themselves Abu Usama, for example, or something like that. And so when you have this very broad, very deep, intense radicalization among all people in Gaza, well, there's always a small percentage that are inclined to use violence, and especially discontent with the situation in Gaza, and these were the ones that became Salafi Jihadis. Also, there are some other people, another category, and these were the people that were left after the 2007 Hamas takeover, that were left, that were Fatawis, that were part of the Fatah party. And they also needed a new cloak. And they also, some of them also became Salafi Jihadis in Gaza. So you have this broad radicalization, and then you add on, around 2005, 2006, 2007, the entry of internet to Gaza, and the influx of foreign fighters via, or foreign people via the tunnels in Rafah. And you get the kind of combustion effect of this explosive environment. So now you have young, angry, feeling humiliated Gaza kids logging onto the internet and finding that there are a lot of groups outside of Gaza that they could take on their thinking and that think like them. I'm now in, or I was last year in Jordan, and when I was in Gaza before, and when you spoke to Salafis, Salafi Jihadis, they would say, yeah, so Abu Mohammad al-Maqdisi is one of the persons that we follow, and other radical imams in Jordan. And Jordan comes up as a country, as an environment that these people talk about that has inspired them. And then what's interesting to see is that when you look at what's been written about Salafi, how Hamas has dealt with the Salafi Jihadis so far, it's mostly, the understanding that so they've been dealing with them very fiercely, like they dealt with Fatah in 2007, throwing them down from buildings, putting them against the wall, shooting them, and so on. This is the view that I had when I started my research. My view of this is different now, and I think Hamas also changed its behavior during the past 10 years. So what we saw in 2006, 2007, 2006 when Hamas cooperated with the Jaish al-Islam and kidnapped Gilad Shalit. So there we could say there was a cooperation with the Salafi Jihadis. Hamas used to say before that, so everyone is welcome in Gaza as long as they join in the fight against Israel. We have no problems with other groups in Gaza as long as they are fighting in the same direction as we are. Then Hamas came to power, and these friend groups all of a sudden became a liability. They were not only not doing what Hamas wanted, but they also challenged Hamas on the most important things, namely the Islamic credentials of Hamas. So all of a sudden there were groups saying that, you are not you are not the true Islamists here. We are the true Islamists. We are the Salafis. We are the pure ones. Exactly what you heard before. And then the coming years, after 2007, we could see an attempt by Hamas, a strategy of Hamas of trying to eliminate the Salafi Jihadis. So it was a head-on confrontation between Hamas and these groups. And the kind of turning point was after the Ibn Taymiyyah Islamic Caliphate proclamation in Rafah in 2009.
It was an emirate, not a caliphate.
Yeah. So the emirate. So, as we heard before, it was an extremely violent takedown of this group, even a shooting down of the mosque. Yeah, even destruction of the mosque that they had assembled in. And Gazans, ordinary Gazans, were saying, well, okay, so we don't like the Salafis, but they are Muslims. Come on, you cannot deal with them in any way you want. It's not. So Hamas was losing support in their violent way of dealing with the Salafis. So this was one reason to why Hamas started to change a little bit. The other reason is because Hamas started to find out that there are a lot of people, not only people that had defected from Hamas's military ranks to these Salafi Jihadi groups, but also people that had kept their membership in the Qassam brigades while in their spare time being in these groups. And so the Hamas leadership were becoming really worried about, so how big is this secret number of, or invisible number of people actually having double membership? Could this be a strategic threat to us? Up till now we thought that, there are only 1,000 people. Maybe there are 2,000, 3,000, maybe the whole of the Qassam brigades are empathizing with or sympathizing with the Salafi Jihadis. What's going on? So something needed to be done, and it's here it becomes more interesting, because what Hamas did was that they appointed a fact-finding commission consisting of different kind of scholars, Islamic scholars, psychiatrists. They did the kind of a screening or a kind of a investigation into how big this problem was. And so all membership acquisitions were stopped into the Qassam brigades or into Hamas. All people were interviewed / interrogated. And this fact-finding commission profiled who were the people, what would the people look like and be like who actually were in the risk zone of either being that we could suspect of having gone over to the other side, or that we would worry about that they would actually sooner or later be too critical of Hamas, that they will leave the ranks of the Qassam brigades. This fact-finding commission also suggested two addresses of this problem. The first one was to institute a prison-based de-radicalization program in the Hamas jails. And the second one was a more broad-based counter-radicalization program to be implemented broader in society. And to say a few words first about the de-radicalization program in the prisons, what would happen would be that when Salafi jihadists had been taken by Hamas, they were put in jail. They were not put in a normal jail, they were put in a nicer jail than normal inmates. So it was a special, it was one house in Gaza City that was transformed from an apartment house into a jail. I'm not saying that the conditions were super nice, I'm saying that relatively nice than other inmates. To this house would come imams affiliated with Hamas, but who were in their private life closer to the Salafi movement. So they would have an understanding of both sides. So they would go into this prison and they would try to persuade the Salafi jihadists to understand the right interpretation of Islam instead. Into this prison would also come Hamas leaders to do the political indoctrination. All this work to try to bring the Salafi jihadists back into the fold of Hamas interpretation and Hamas's ranks. And Hamas had the hope of doing this. Yes. Yeah. And the third block would be that Salafi jihadists were released earlier than other normal criminals, and they would then get regular visits by the mukhabarat to their houses, and this program would continue, this tutoring would continue in their houses. Broader in society, the counter-radicalization program was, you can imagine yourself, it was coordinating the message in all of the mosques. I went to the mosque every Friday in Gaza with the family I stayed with. And you could hear how this message was an anti-Salafi jihadi message, trying to get people to stay with Hamas's interpretation of Islam. And also broadly, new education packages to the schools, to the universities, about Islam, recitation courses in the ministries, round tables about how to interpret Islam and so on. There's so many things to say about this. This gave you a flavor of what I'm doing. You can read more in the book, or you can talk to me later on. So I think we will open up for these questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for 4 fascinating lectures, and I'm sorry that we had to stop you at this interesting moment. We have about